All right. Hello and welcome to another Expert Inside interview. My name is John Golden from Sales Pop Online Sales Magazine and Pipeliner CRM, joining you. Well, I get to say this once in a while, joining you from a wet and rainy San Diego. I normally say sunny, but it's wet and rainy today. And I'm delighted to be joined from Knoxville, Tennessee by Dr. Garland Vance. How are you doing, Garland?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Super excited for this conversation today, John.
Yeah. And you've spent over 25 years helping organizations develop the leaders they need to succeed. And you believe that everybody deserves to work with a great leader, and every leader can become great.
I
You're the
do.
author of Getting Unbusy, which Forbes named as one of the 7 books everyone on your team should read, which received the Author Elites Award in 2020, Best Business Book. That's what we're going to talk about leadership today. So I guess let me ask you the first question. I mean, I agree, everybody deserves a great leader, right? But the second part of that, can every leader become great?
Yeah, that's definitely the more controversial of the topics. And so I do think every leader can become great. There has to be two decisions that they make.
Mhm,
The first is they have to make the decision that they're going to put the mission and they're going to put other people ahead of themselves.
mhm,
And if they do that, then they're one step further. They can become great. And then the second thing that they have to decide is they have to decide to get unleashed from the things that are holding them back.
right.
And so in our research, we found the 7 areas that hold leaders back, and a good leader becomes great when they get unleashed.
Right. So what are some of the before we get into those, what are some of the misconceptions you think leaders have about what it means to be great?
Yeah, I think a lot of leaders think that I'd say there's a couple of
Mm,
misconceptions that are common. Number one is the misconception that a great leader knows everything, right? That they see the future
mhm,
perfectly, that they know all the answers, that they have the perfect strategy, and that everybody should just come to them and they'll, bestow all of their knowledge
mm,
on them. That's a I think if you ask leaders, they would say, "Oh, no, I don't actually think somebody does that." But a lot of times that's an unintentional belief
mhm,
that we have about what it means to be a great leader. I think on the other side of that, a lot of times people make a mistake of believing that a great leader only cares about the relationships that are there. And so, people will begin to say, well, a great leader will listen to you all the time and will emotionally support
mhm.
you and so we kind of get this like a pastor or a priest type
Yeah.
of mentality as opposed to a leader who values both relationships and results.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I think that's such an important thing, the balance of relationships and results, because at the end of the day, as you said, relationships are great, but if they're not generating the results, then there's something wrong with that
Right, we've got a
equation.
lovely little club, but we don't actually have we're not actually accomplishing anything.
Actually a business, yeah. Um, and in your book, Getting Unbusy, you challenge the glorification of busyness, and this is something that I mean, I grew up in corporate America, like I said before we were coming on air. Like I came here during the .com and the mid 90s, and I've been
Yeah.
sort of grew up in corporate America. And let's face it, stress, busyness, first in, last out, constantly weekend, whatever, that's really what we've celebrated and glorified in corporate America, let's be honest, and probably throughout the
Sure.
world, but certainly here.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And what's interesting with busyness is that we have this assumption, right, that a
Mhm.
busy person is a productive person. A
Right.
busy person is a valuable person. But several years ago, I started doing my doctoral research, and as I was working on my doctorate, I hit a wall, and I started having migraine headaches like
Mhm.
crazy, was exhausted all the time. I would wake up exhausted, go to bed exhausted. I would forget things constantly. And finally, I went to my doctor. I said, "Hey, what's going on?" And my doctor said, "Well, tell me about your life." And I said, "Well, I work 50 to 60 hours a week. I am working on my doctoral program. That takes 10 to 20 hours a week. I said, my wife and I have 3 young kids, all under the age of 6. So we're raising them, having a great time with them, helping our church with some leadership development programs that they're starting. So, oh, and by the way, um, my mom died just a few months ago, and so I've really
Mhm.
slowed down to make some space. And my doctor looked at me and he said, "Garland, I think I know what's wrong with you." And I'm thinking, all these headaches. Is it like a brain tumor? What's happening here? And he said, "I think you're busy, and your busyness is causing stress, and all of this stress is killing you." And John, I thought he was crazy. I thought that was the stupidest thing that I had ever heard. And so I decided to go research busyness and what it does to leaders. And
Right.
and here's the long and the short of it. You're absolutely right. We glorify it, but busyness is killing us physically, mentally, emotionally, relationally. It absolutely takes a toll on us.
Yeah. No, I love I love that when you're diagnosed as busy.
Yeah.
I can imagine your face when the doc you go, "What? Hang on."
Right.
Could you at least make up a Roman name for that?
Right, and well, and all of us really kind of assume that it's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
Because we will say, I'm good, I'm busy, just it's a good busy," right? And
Mm.
so we say it's a good thing, and then the doctor says, "No, it's actually not a good thing." And man,
Yeah.
it really threw me for a loop.
Yeah, because one of the things, Garland, I feel today is, this concept of being busy, but also this people say all the time, like, "I'm busier than I've ever been
Yeah,
in my life," and I always challenge that, and I always say, "Are you though, or are you more distracted than you've ever been in your life?" And I
yeah,
think that's got more to do with it because we have all these electronic devices, we can get stuff from everywhere that it's and what we're not doing is creating space for quiet.
yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And well, and what the research ended up showing too is that busyness is an overcommitment to too many good commitments.
Right.
And so whether that's something on your phone, whether that's, we have more television shows and
Mhm.
movies and
Yep.
entertainment than we've ever had before, whether it's a proliferation of email and text messages, it's it is this overcommitment to so many good commitments that it actually harms us. And it reminds me of when one of my kids was little and we went to eat at a sushi restaurant,
Mhm.
and he decided to order a rainbow roll that at this or a scorpion roll that at this specific restaurant was 2 rolls in 1. And he
Right.
was just a little kid. He decided to take on the challenge. He ate the whole thing
Oh
by
my goodness.
himself. But for the next 3 years of his life, if he heard the word sushi, he turned green. Like, he would
Mhm.
literally be like, "Oh, I can't think about sushi." Sushi's a good thing. He just had so much of it that it became a bad thing for him.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I have that with schnapps, but that's a whole other story for another day. Um, uh, so, what are the key principles that you believe that leaders need to understand in order to be successful?
Yeah, well, I think so let's kind of step away from the
Yeah.
busyness conversation and talk really at a higher level. And we actually start my business partner, who is also my wife. She and I
Mhm.
recently released another book called Unleashed Leadership. Um, and so here's what I would say is for leaders in particular, every problem, there's 2 principles I want them to understand. Number 1, every problem in a business is influenced by leadership issues. It's influenced by the decisions that leaders make, by the actions that leaders take or don't take, the strategy that they roll out, the way that they treat people. Every problem in a business starts as a leadership problem. And that's the bad news, right? That's the
Mhm.
painful news. The flip side of that is every solution in a business starts as a leadership solution
Right.
as well. And then that leads to the second principle is if you know that you are the cause of the challenges in a business, or at least you're
Mhm.
a major influencer in those challenges, then the more quickly you can diagnose the root causes of your issues, the easier it will be to positively influence the whole
Mhm.
organization.
So basically then part of it is then you need to understand and take ownership of this,
Absolutely.
and realize that it is that it starts and finishes with you. What happens in between are the things you need to start looking at.
Right, exactly, exactly, is it absolutely starts with you, and what we've been working with leaders for 25 years, and here's what we've seen. Most leaders don't have a problem with that first statement. That
Mhm.
it hurts, they don't like
Sure.
it, but
Mhm.
it they don't have a problem with it. But when we say the second statement, you need to understand what the root issues are that are causing problems. That's when they kind of throw up their hands and they shrug and they say, okay, where do I even begin?
Yep.
Because if you go into a bookstore, there's 1,000 books in there that are telling you different issues. And so that's why we actually wrote another book, of
Mhm.
course, but we wrote Unleashed Leadership is because in our research, what we had found was that there are actually only 7 issues that leaders deal with that cause all of those problems. And so if they can know what those are, if they can name the issue, then they can begin dealing with the problem much faster.
Yeah. So what are some of those issues? I mean, we won't get to all 7 obviously, but what are a couple of those issues to highlight?
Sure, sure. So all of them start with the letter C. My dad was a pastor, so everything had to be alliterated or rhymed at
Mhm.
some point. So I'll just tell you 3 of
Mhm.
the biggest issues. So one of the biggest issues is what we would call character.
Mm.
Now, when there are actually 2 different types of character that leaders have to deal with. One is moral character. You know, do you lie? Do you cheat? Do you steal? Are you doing unethical and immoral
Mhm.
things? So you look at Enron or things like that,
Sure.
and you can say, okay, there were some moral leadership issues. But there's a second type of character, and that's what we call leadership character. And leadership character is about your humility. Do I view others as better than me? Do I view others as important, or do I treat myself as if I'm the most important person in the world? It's about your responsibility. Do you take ownership for your thoughts and your actions and your behaviors? And then it's also about your view of people. Do you love people? Do you care about them and want to give them honor and dignity and respect? So that's one of the big issues we see
Mm.
regularly is a character issue. A second issue we see a lot is clarity. Uh,
Go.
clarity is all about, do you see the vision for the future clearly, and do you help everyone around you see it clearly? So we found that there are 4 subconscious questions that every employee is asking every day when it comes to leadership, and it's, where are we going? How are we getting there? What's my role in getting there? And why is it important to get there in the first place?
Mhm.
And if
And
the
just
leader's not answering those, it creates massive chaos and confusion.
and I think that, well, I mean, I agree with character, obviously, both of those. There's the clarity one, I think, is one that's often overlooked. And I
Mm,
and I do think, I think this is where a lot of leaders do have problems, because let's face it, I mean, you give directives, you say, okay, go do this, and but you don't explain it properly, so it comes back and it's not what you wanted. So then you go, oh, for goodness sake, I just do it myself or whatever.
right.
Or you send this poor person back with more and more corrections or things to do or whatever, and it all boils down to the fact that you weren't clear in the first place. And I think sometimes as leaders, like we assume that the people understand what we're saying.
Yes.
We don't validate it enough.
Exactly. You're absolutely right. There tends to be this mentality of, if I have spoken, it should be clear to you.
Yeah, exactly.
And
And we've
it
all been
rarely
guilty, and
is.
I've just put up my hand. I'm probably been just as guilty of it as anyone else.
Yeah. Oh, and I've done it. I'm
Mhm,
with you as well. I've done it a million times where I've said something and come
mhm,
back and gotten something and been like, okay, that
mhm.
wasn't what I was aiming for, right there. But when leaders begin to own that, right? Like, wait a second, that's an issue on my part for not communicating
Mhm,
clearly, not an issue on their part for misunderstanding. And let's make sure that we create clarity
mhm,
around
yeah.
that.
And I've
And,
always felt too with leaders too, as you said, like, explain the vision clearly and all of that, is that's again, is like, it should be simple. And if you can't articulate it in a simple form, then you have a problem. So don't
Yes.
blame everybody else. If you can't articulate it, the vision in a very simple and clear and understandable way, that's your fault, not the fault of other people.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And in fact, I saw research a few years ago that said 78% of surveyed employees do not believe that their leaders have a clear direction for the future.
Mm.
So even if it's in their head,
Yeah.
if it hasn't worked its way out into the paper, into the hands, and into the hearts of the people who are actually going to be doing that, then you haven't created clarity yet.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I did once. I was a couple of companies I was running used to have the strategy, we get it onto one page
Mm,
and then would laminate it and send it to everybody back in the days when people and say, "Put that up in your workspace." And if you can't relate what you're doing on a daily basis to what's on on that sheet, then talk to your manager.
right, right. Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So what was the third one? So it was character clarity and the third one?
Yeah, and so the third one we'll talk about is community, and so
Mm,
this one is very often overlooked by leaders. Community is all about the trust that a leader establishes with the people they're working with, but also the trust they establish throughout the team. And so what we found is that a lot of leaders expect trust and collaboration to happen very organically,
right,
right? They're hoping that it just pops up. Well, when we moved here to Knoxville, Tennessee about 8 years ago, we moved into a house where the people had not done yard work for 10 years. They
right.
had done, they had cut the grass, but they hadn't actually, trimmed any of the bushes, anything along those lines. So we had tons of organic growth. In fact, we had one bush that was supposed to be 5 feet tall and it was like 35 feet tall.
Mhm.
And so tons of organic growth, but it wasn't intentional and it wasn't proactive growth. And that's what leaders have to make the switch is if they're going to build trust, they have to be intentional and proactive
Mm,
with it. They have to pursue the relationship. They have to pursue getting to know the person. They have to pursue building trust through giving assignments that establish the skill set of the person. And when leaders begin to do that, that trust affects and leaks out onto the entire team.
yeah. And there's one other thing, Garland, that often fascinates me about human beings, right? How we're hardwired, right? And we're really good at spotting mistakes, errors, all of that kind of good stuff, right? We're fantastic
Yeah.
at that.
Yeah.
We're terrible about catching people doing things right. And I
Mm.
think that's the thing of a great failure sometimes is just taking that moment to tell somebody that they did a good job or to say that I really like what you did here or whatever, or this is yeah. Instead, we go, great, I got what I needed, and we run off. But if we don't get what we needed, you get all the feedback in the world.
Right, right. All the feedback and all of it painful
Yeah.
typically. Yeah. Yeah, it reminds me, when, again, I know I talk a lot about my family, but when
Mhm.
when our kids were really little, what we learned is what gets rewarded gets repeated, what gets recognized gets repeated. And we fail to see that as people
Mhm.
become adults, that it doesn't really change for us. If you praise me for something, guess what? I'm gonna do it again, and I'm
Mhm.
probably gonna do it more often.
Yep.
And so whatever you pay attention to, that's what you're gonna get more of. So decide what you wanna pay attention to.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's it, and I think that goes hand in hand with the community aspect. Is if you really feel that your leader is genuinely recognizing what you're doing, and the other thing you mentioned is trust, and I think sometimes that's the thing. I think sometimes leaders come in feeling that their position gives you should trust me because I
Mm,
am X, and you go, no, I'll trust you by virtue of what you say, but more importantly by what you do.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely true. Lao Tzu had this saying, and I love to use this. He says, "He who does not trust much will not be trusted." And so leaders have to really flip kind of the old way of thinking. So the old way of thinking is exactly what you said.
Mhm,
I have a position, therefore you should trust me. The
mhm,
new way of thinking is I have a position, therefore I need to earn your trust. And I'm going to do that by giving you trust first. I'm going to assume that you're smart. I'm going to assume that you have good intentions. I'm going to assume that you have the skills. If you prove me wrong, we may have some hard discussions, but I'm going to start by giving trust that assumes you're
Mhm.
capable and able to do what you're here to do.
And just finally, just one question: what would you say to somebody who would like to be a leader but just doesn't think they're cut out to be one?
Yeah. So I think that's always I don't think that's uncommon. And here's what I would say is that I think that the foundation of good character is humility. So if you don't think you're cut out for it, that's actually a really good place to start, because it's the people who do think they're cut out for
Hmm.
it, right? It's the people who like wake up in the morning and they're like, I got this. I'm an amazing leader. Those
Hmm.
are the ones nobody needs to work for. Those are
Hmm.
the scary ones. But it's the people who honestly can look at themselves and be like, gosh, I'm confident in the vision that I have us going to. Maybe I'm confident in the strategy. I'm confident in the people, but I've got a lot of growth and learning to do. That's a person who I want to follow.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's fantastic if you feel you've got a lot of growth and learning. Because, yeah, if you wake up and just go, well, I'm a natural leader, I don't
Yeah,
really have to. You might find yourself, you might be leading, but there's nobody following.
exactly. Exactly.
Well, listen, thanks so much, Dr. Vance. This has been really fascinating. All of Garland's information will be below this video. But before we go, please do remind people about what you do.
Yes. So we help leaders, particularly middle managers and senior managers. We help leaders get unleashed in those 7 areas. We do this through an online community called the Unleashed Community. We meet twice per month. And in that time, we dig deep into leadership training and then connect with each other so that all of us can get unleashed. Hey, and before we hop off here, John, just one quick thing.
Mhm.
If your listeners are interested in this, they can get a free copy of our audiobook, right?
Wow.
So this isn't like pay $10 and get it for
Right.
free kind of thing. Free copy of our audiobook if they go to advanceleadership.live/free book. And it's the audiobook of Unleashed Leadership, where we unpack these 7 issues.
Fantastic. Well, I would recommend people to go check that out. Sounds a fantastic resource, and especially if you're one of those people who thinks, "Well, I'd like to lead, but I don't think I can." Go check it out because you might
Yeah.
find out that you're actually far more qualified than perhaps even the person leading you right now.
That's very true.
So, thanks again, Garland. Thank you for watching and listening, and I'll see you all again very soon. Thank
Thanks so
you.
much, John.